Artur Pawlowski. If you don't know who he is, welcome to the channel because it means you're new. 3, 2, 1. Sir, 30,000 feet. Where are you from, Artur? How'd you end up in Canada? And then we're going to get into the updates on the political persecution that you've endured in the so-called free Canada.
Well, I grew up in hell. I mean, literally, I'm not exaggerating. Communism behind the Iron Curtain in Poland that was raped, pillaged, and attacked by the Germans and the Russians and back and forth. And of course, I grew up under the boots of the Soviets, the communists and the socialists, one of the most godliest ideologies on earth. I escaped first my father a year before us, and then we were denied visa 3 times. We escaped on a boat through Turkey, out of all the places, Istanbul, and then to Athens, Greece. We waited 5 years. We did the right way. We waited 5 years for our immigration papers. We went through medical. We had an interview at Canadian Embassy in Athens, and we came to Canada for one purpose. Our El Dorado was in Greece. We had a very successful businesses. We came to Canada for freedom, and that very thing has been denied to us for a number of years. This is my 19th year of fighting with the wannabe pharaohs.
It's like an iteration of the 3 generations from rice paddy to rice paddy, where you have people who fought, died. Then you have the people who were the beneficiaries of that, but lived in the shadow of it and appreciated it. And then you have the 3rd generation that's sufficiently far removed that they say they don't even know that a sacrifice was made. So when they say, yeah, sure, I'll give up some rights to the government, they don't know what people actually fought for because they didn't fight for it themselves. They take for granted it's always like this, it's always been like this, and it's always going to be like this. And then lo and behold, someone is being locked up in jail because they're carrying out church services in a time where the government says you can't exercise religion. Tell us how your trouble started with the Canadian government.
Well, actually, surprisingly, it started with something that if you would say that to me a day before, I would absolutely say you're nuts, you're crazy. I have been feeding people, taking them off the streets since 1999. I know that makes us old, my friend. As long as our ministry was very small and not very effective, I mean, we saved lives, but not in a big scale until 2005. 2005, we took hundreds of people off the streets. We had over 250 volunteers, and that's where the Canadian government showed up. And I was shocked. They said, you're not allowed to congregate. You're not allowed to preach. The name of Jesus is offensive. You are not. Believe it or not, there is a law to this day that says giving free goods and services is prohibited by law. So when I pray for you as a pastor in public, I just committed a crime. When I give you a sandwich, if I give a sandwich to a dying kid, I just committed a crime. I could not believe it. Also, they told me distribution of printed material is also prohibited by law. Bibles, you cannot give them away for free. Gospel tracts, you cannot give them. I said, like, what, are you crazy? This is Canada, not Poland under the boots of the Soviets. So I decided to oppose them. That created 10 years. International news. I was in the news every second evening. 10 years, over 100 court cases, over 300 citations at that time, multiple arrests. I became the first Canadian to be arrested for publicly reading Bible, no amplification. I was told that the Bible is offensive, the name of Jesus is offensive, and therefore it's prohibited by law. I became a prisoner. I faced a year of imprisonment. I won every single fight, Court of Appeals, QB, Queen's Bench, provincial, you name it, criminal charges. I won in 2015. They left me be for a few years. And as you remember, I think they looked for an excuse and they have found it. I became the first Canadian to get their pandemic ticket. They did a big story about it. The chief of police was interviewed. I was called a troublemaker, lawbreaker, drama killer, grandpa destroyer, community destroyer, bloody murderer, compared to Adolf Hitler, all those different things. But you got to remember, my trouble always started with me feeding the poor. That's all. I always get in trouble for feeding people. I could not believe it, and giving them messages of hope. So that's how it started with me. The Get Out video that you referred, that came a year later. For a year, they were hunting me down, literally hunting me down on the streets of Calgary for feeding the poor. My record at that time was when the Canadian government forbade us to have Christmas, singing, remember, Lord's Supper, and I had over 20 police officers, over 40 police vehicles. We had chief of police, anti-terrorist, SWAT team at our church service, and I end up with 15 tickets for doing, according to them, the unthinkable. I hired carolers. Singing was prohibited by law, and I did the Christmas festival for the poor. And we gave hundreds of gifts away. We had AAA steaks, barbecues. Then the 2021 shows up. They come to our church building. And I'm telling you, I had nothing else to give them. I reasoned with them. I talked with them. I met with them. This is not like Artur Pawlowski woke up one day and said, "You Nazis, get out." No, I've done everything as a Canadian I could. I had meetings with them. I reasoned. I said, "You don't make any sense. If you forbid me to feed those people, what do you think is going to happen to 15 to 20,000 different individuals facing homelessness? You're shutting down shelters, shutting down soup kitchens. You're going to create crime. People will die. They will attack people. They will break into houses, into cars, into grocery stores. Let me feed them. Let me feed them." No. No. And of course, at the same time, you got politicians partying at the Sky Palace premiere with his ministers, double standards, one law for me, one law for thee. So when I saw all of that uncovering, I said, never again I will negotiate with you people, because you're liars, you're manipulators, and you're acting just like Gestapo. Gestapo means political police. When they entered our church, I had nothing else to give them except get out.
It is amazing, because when we talked about it during the last interview, the homeless initiative by the government is a money laundering industry, and they don't like seeing people who are more effective than them, and they don't want people actually solving the problem, because then they don't get to allocate whatever funds to combating homelessness, so they can all dip in and siphon and whatever. The more homeless, the better it is for the actual government, like we see in California. I didn't know you until the video. Let me bring it up. I think everybody will have seen it. This is the shortened version. I won't play the whole thing.
Please get out. Get out of this property. Immediately get out. Get out of this property immediately. Out. I don't want to hear anything. Out of this property immediately. I don't want to hear a word. Out. Out. Out of this property immediately until you come back with a warrant. Out. 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 Out of this property immediately. Out.
And eventually, after having gotten the message, they back out. This was Alberta Health Services coming to. Was it Easter week? Was it within? It was prior to Easter.
This was the holiest time in a year. It was a Passover, so it's Easter, a weekend, and they came with the police officers, of course, armed with pistols. They came with bylaw services and some other undercover people. You have to understand that they broke a section of the Criminal Code of Canada, Section 176, 1, 2, and 3. It's illegal. What they were doing was illegal from the beginning to the end. And I know the law. I studied the law. Of course, I have a legal team throughout of this ordeal. And what the authorities were doing was completely against the Criminal Code, Constitution, Charter of Rights and Freedoms. But as you know, we have highly corrupted judges that have been helping those criminals, those gangsters in uniform, to break the law. They're acting just like gangsters from mafia. They're the muscle, and unfortunately are not thinking, but only obeying whatever wishes of the politicians. And we have what we have. All of that is included in a book, because I have included the judges, the names, political fixers. As you remember, when I was on your show last time, there were attempted briberies for about 10 years from the Premier of Alberta directly. I was offered millions of dollars to shut my mouth. I was offered a guaranteed seat at the legislature. If I keep my mouth shut, I was offered a guaranteed a government job for $250,000. And then after the attempted bribery, when they realized Artur Pawlowski is not for sale, they started to send people that are called political fixers. All of that story, the imprisonment, every day what happened to me in prison, solitary confinement, metal cages. Again, remember, all of those charges were for me doing my job. Think about it. My latest arrest was for a sermon, 90 minutes chit-chat, a speech to the hurting Canadians, farmers and truckers, when I told them 3 times, no guns. This is a peaceful solidarity-style uprising. What that means is a general strike. I said to them, there's more of us than of them. They don't have enough police officers. If the people, we the people, if we say no more, we're not going to cooperate, and if they would just refuse to work for them, then this whole thing would collapse.